You wake up at 3 in the morning with this gnawing sensation in your chest, something you want, something you have wanted for months, maybe years. And the first thing you do, before you even fully open your eyes, is push it down, bury it. Tell yourself you are being selfish. Tell yourself, mature people do not operate this way. Mature people sacrifice. Mature people think of others first. Mature people do not burn with wanting like this. But underneath all that rationalization, underneath all that careful emotional management you have perfected over decades, something is screaming. Something is clawing at the walls you built. And you know what the most painful part is? You are so good at silencing it that most days you do not even hear it anymore. You have become an expert at not wanting, at not needing, at being the person everyone can count on while your own desires starve in the basement of your consciousness. This is the secret cost of emotional maturity that nobody warns you about. You spent years learning to regulate your emotions, to consider others, to think before you react, to be responsible, to be dependable, to be the adult in every room. And somewhere along that journey, you learned to treat your own desires like they are inconveniences, like they are embarrassments, like they are proof you have not evolved enough. You look at people who chase what they want with abandon, and you feel this mixture of judgment and envy. They seem selfish, sure, but they also seem alive in a way you forgot how to be. They have not yet learned to be ashamed of wanting. They have not yet internalized the voice that says, mature people do not get to want things for themselves anymore. But you have. And it is killing something inside you that you cannot even name. Think about the last time you admitted to yourself what you actually want. Not what you should want, not what would be mature to want, not what would make you a better person to want, but what you viscerally, desperately, almost irrationally want. Can you even remember? Most emotionally mature people cannot. Because somewhere in the process of becoming the person everyone relies on, they stopped asking that question. They stopped checking in with the part of themselves that still burns with hunger for experiences, for pleasure, for passion, for things that serve no purpose except to make them feel gloriously, selfishly alive. You trained yourself to believe that adulthood means the death of desire, that maturity means learning to live on crumbs while you serve everyone else the feast. And the most twisted part, you are proud of this. You wear your desirelessness like a badge of honor. Look how little I need. Look how much I can endure. Look how well I function on nothing, but your body knows. Your body knows you are lying. When you were younger, before you learned to be so controlled, you wanted things with your whole chest. You wanted and reached and demanded and felt no shame about it. Because you were operating in what Erikson understood as the earlier phases of development, where the primary work is discovering what you want and learning you deserve to pursue it. In those early years, autonomy meant being able to choose. Initiative meant being able to act on your desires. Identity meant figuring out what makes you uniquely you and not apologizing for it. But then something happened. You moved into the phases where the work shifted. Intimacy required you to consider another person's needs. Generativity asked you to focus on the next generation, on contribution, on legacy. And somewhere in that transition, you misunderstood the assignment. You thought becoming generative, becoming mature, meant erasing your own desires entirely. You thought the point was self-negation, self-sacrifice as a permanent state. But that is not what Erikson meant. That is not what healthy development looks like. What you did was skip the integration part. You never learned to hold both, to be both a person who contributes to others and a person who still gets to want things, to be both responsible and hungry, to be both mature and alive. The hidden pattern in emotionally mature people is this brutal overcorrection. You saw selfishness around you, probably in your family of origin, probably in people who hurt you by always putting themselves first. And you decided you would be different. You would be the opposite. You would be the person who never asks for anything, who never burdens anyone, who never prioritizes their own needs over others. And in doing that, you created a different kind of prison. You became so afraid of being selfish that you made yourself disappear. Your desires became shameful. Your needs became evidence of failure. Your wanting became something you had to hide, even from yourself. And now you are stuck in this exhausting middle space where you are too mature to act on your desires, but not mature enough to realize that denying them is slowly hollowing you out from the inside. Pause for a moment. Something just shifted in your chest when I talked about this, did it not? About hiding your desires, about treating your own wanting like it is something shameful. You have been doing this for how long? Decades, probably. Pretending you do not need what you need. Pretending you do not want what you want. Performing this constant act of selflessness that everyone applauds, but nobody sees the cost of. So, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be brutally honest with yourself about this. What do you want that you have been too afraid or too ashamed to admit out loud? Not what you should want, not what would make you a better person to want, but what you actually want with a ferocity that scares you when you let yourself feel it. If this hits something deep, if you felt that tightness in your throat or that heat behind your eyes, comment below exactly these words. I am allowed to want things for myself. Copy and paste that. Because when you write those words, you are not just giving yourself permission. You are sending a signal to hundreds of other people watching this in silence that they are not selfish for still having desires. That maturity does not mean becoming a ghost of a person who only exists to serve others. Your comment might be the permission someone needs to stop performing desirelessness and start living again. So, where does this war between maturity and desire actually come from? It comes from a fundamental misunderstanding of what growing up means. Somewhere along the way, we collectively decided that emotional maturity means transcending the body, transcending instinct, transcending anything that feels primal or urgent or selfish. We elevated the mind, the rational, the controlled, and we demonized everything else. Desire became childish. Hunger became embarrassing. Passion became something people grow out of. And emotionally mature people, people like you who have worked hard to develop self-awareness and emotional regulation, internalized this completely. You took it as gospel. You thought the goal was to become this perfectly balanced being who operates entirely from a place of calm consideration, never swayed by something as messy as wanting. But bodies do not work that way. Humans do not work that way. You did not transcend desire by becoming mature. You just got better at lying to yourself about it. And your body knows. Your body knows when you're hungry and you pretend you're not. Your body knows when you're touch-starved and you tell yourself you're fine alone. Your body knows when you crave pleasure or adventure or rest and you override it with duty and responsibility and the needs of everyone else. and your body keeps score. Emotionally mature people often suffer from mysterious chronic conditions. Fatigue that no amount of sleep fixes. Tension that lives in your shoulders and jaw and never releases. Digestive issues, insomnia, a constant low-level anxiety that you cannot explain because on paper your life is fine. And doctors run tests and find nothing because the tests cannot measure the cost of perpetual self-denial. The tests cannot measure what happens when you spend years at war with your own desires. Your nervous system knows you are lying when you say you do not want what you want. Your body knows you are in danger when you systematically ignore every signal it sends about what it needs to thrive. And it responds the only way it knows how, with symptoms, with pain, with this constant background noise of discomfort that you have learned to tolerate because you are mature and mature people can handle discomfort. Except you are not just handling discomfort, you are creating it. Every time you say no to yourself when your body is screaming yes, every time you choose obligation over desire, duty over pleasure, sacrifice over self-care, you are not being mature. You are being cruel to yourself in a way you would never tolerate someone being cruel to anyone else you love. And the most insidious part of all this is that the world rewards you for it. People praise you for being so selfless, for being so reliable, for never asking for anything, for always putting others first. And every bit of praise reinforces the pattern. Every time someone tells you how mature you are, how together you are, how much they admire your self-control, you get a hit of validation that makes the self-denial feel worth it. You are a good person. Look how little you need. Look how much you give. But underneath all that external validation, something inside you is dying. The part of you that knows how to want things is atrophying from disuse. The part of you that feels desire is suffocating under layers of should and responsibility and fear of being seen as selfish. And you can pretend this is fine for a very long time. You can pretend you have transcended desire, that you are above such petty human needs, until one day you wake up and realize you cannot remember the last time you felt truly alive, truly yourself, truly connected to the raw animal aliveness of being human. Erik Erikson talked about generativity as this beautiful stage where you focus on contributing to the next generation, on creating things that will outlast you, on nurturing and guiding others. And that is important work, essential work. But he never said generativity means self-erasure. He never said the point is to pour yourself out until there is nothing left. He never said mature people become hollow vessels that exist only to serve. But so many people in this stage, people in their 40s, 50s, 60s, interpret it that way. They think being generative means their own desires do not matter anymore. They think contributing to others requires sacrificing themselves completely. And they end up stuck in what Erikson called stagnation. Not because they are not doing things. They are doing plenty. Too much, probably. But because they are not growing. They are not developing. They are not individuating. They are performing a version of maturity that is actually just slow self-destruction dressed up as virtue. Real generativity includes self-nourishment. Real maturity includes desire. Real development means learning to hold the paradox of being both a person who contributes to the world and a person who still gets to want things for themselves. You do not have to choose between being responsible and being alive, between being mature and being hungry, between taking care of others and taking care of yourself. But you do have to stop treating your desires like they are evidence of failure. You have to stop believing that wanting something for yourself makes you selfish. You have to stop performing this constant act of self-denial and calling it growth. Because it is not growth. It is stagnation. It is the slow fossilization of the most vibrant parts of who you are. And the reconnection starts with something small and terrifying. It starts with asking yourself what you want and actually listening to the answer. Not the sanitized answer, not the answer you think you should give, but the real answer, the one that might scare you, the one that might feel selfish, the one that might require you to stop being the person everyone thinks you are and start being the person you actually are. And then, and this is the hardest part, you have to give yourself permission to want it, not necessarily to have it, not even necessarily to pursue it, but to want it, to feel the wanting fully without immediately drowning it in guilt or shame or rationalization about why you should not feel this way. Just let yourself want something with your whole chest the way you did before you learned to be so controlled. Feel how much energy that wanting contains, how much life, how much raw human vitality you have been suppressing because you thought that was what maturity required. This is not about becoming reckless. This is not about ignoring responsibilities or abandoning the people who depend on you. This is about understanding that you are not a martyr, and life is not asking you to be one. This is about recognizing that the version of maturity you have been performing, where you have no needs and no desires and no hunger of your own, is not health. It is not wisdom. It is not evolved. It is self-abandonment. And at some point, you have to decide. Do you want to be the person everyone can count on at the cost of losing yourself completely? Or do you want to be someone who can hold both? Someone who contributes to others and still has a self to return to at the end of the day? Someone who is responsible and reliable and also wildly, unapologetically alive? If you made it this far in this video, something in you is waking up. Some part of you that you buried years ago is starting to stir. And that is uncomfortable. That is supposed to be uncomfortable. Because you have spent a long time building a life around the denial of your own desires. And when those desires start to surface again, everything shakes. But discomfort is not the same as danger. Growth always feels destabilizing before it feels liberating. What you are experiencing, this restlessness, this growing awareness that something is missing, this quiet rage at how much of yourself you have given away, that is not a problem. That is the beginning of real maturity, the kind that includes all of who you are, the kind that does not require you to be less human in order to be more evolved. When you subscribe to this channel, you're not just accessing more videos. You are committing to this ongoing conversation about what it means to be fully human, about how to grow without shrinking yourself, about how to be mature without becoming a ghost. We explore this territory every week, and thousands of people are finding their way back to themselves through these conversations. You do not have to do this alone. The way back to yourself is not complicated, but it is not easy. It requires you to start telling the truth to yourself first, about what you want, about what you need, about what you have been denying and why. And then it requires you to start making small choices that honor those truths instead of burying them. It might mean saying no to something everyone expects you to say yes to. It might mean pursuing something that feels frivolous or selfish or irresponsible by the standards you have held yourself to for decades. It might mean disappointing someone. It might mean being less available. It might mean admitting that the person you have been pretending to be, this perfectly selfless, endlessly giving version of yourself, was never real and was slowly killing you. And people might not understand. The ones who benefited from your self-denial might resist. They might accuse you of changing, of being selfish, of not being the person they thought you were. And they will be right. You are changing. You are being selfish in the sense that you are starting to include yourself in the circle of people whose needs matter. And you are not the person they thought you were, because that person was a performance, and performances are exhausting, and you cannot sustain them forever. Some emotionally mature people hit their 60s and 70s still running from their own desires, still performing selflessness, still proud of how little they need. And they look back at their lives and feel this creeping sense of having missed something essential. They did everything right. They were responsible. They took care of everyone. They never asked for anything. And somehow they ended up feeling empty, like they watched their own life happen from a distance and never actually lived it. This is the danger of mistaking self-denial for maturity. You can spend your entire life being good and responsible and selfless and still end up in despair because you were never fully here. You were never fully yourself. You were so busy being who everyone needed you to be that you forgot there was a you underneath all that performance. And at a certain point, it becomes too late to go back and recover those lost years. Too late to pursue the desires you buried. Too late to become the person you might have been if you had not been so afraid of being selfish. But if you are watching this now, it is not too late for you. Whatever age you are, whatever responsibilities you carry, whatever version of selflessness you have been performing, you can start telling the truth. You can start wanting things again. You can start making choices that honor your actual desires instead of the ones you think you should have. And it will be messy. It will be uncomfortable. People will not understand. But the alternative is spending the rest of your life as a ghost, going through the motions, being the person everyone needs while the person you actually are slowly disappears. And that is not maturity. That is tragedy. You get one life, one body, one nervous system, one chance to figure out how to be both responsible and alive, both mature and hungry, both giving and receiving. And the work is not transcending desire. The work is learning to integrate it, to hold space for your own wanting without guilt, to pursue what matters to you without abandoning what you have built, to be the person others can count on while also being someone you can count on, someone who shows up for your own life with the same devotion you show up for everyone else's. Your desires are not the problem. Your shame about your desires is the problem. Your belief that maturity means killing off the parts of yourself that still burn with wanting, that still ache with need, that still crave experiences that serve no purpose except to make you feel alive. That belief is what is keeping you stuck. And you can keep performing this version of maturity where you are above such messy human things as desire. Or you can start the uncomfortable, liberating work of remembering that you are human, that you get to want things, that you deserve to want things, that your desires are not evidence of spiritual failure, but evidence of life. And life wants to be lived, not managed, not transcended, not denied, lived fully, messily, urgently, while you still can.